This video shows the requirements, the calculation and interpretation, as well as the reporting of the results for the two-sample t-test in R. The purpose is testing the means of two groups for differences. For example, I have a trained and an untrained group of people and I want to test for a difference in the average number of push-ups between those two groups. Let's quickly talk requirements. The dependent variable or test variable should be on an interval or ratio scale. Testing for normal distribution and homogeneity of variance will be shown explicitly now. The test variable for each group should be approximately normally distributed. There are three possible ways: an analytical test like the Shapiro-Wilk test, number 1, a histogram, number 2, or a QQ plot, number 3. The Shapiro-Wilk test is oversensitive to unimportant deviations from normal distribution in large samples. This is a phenomenon for all analytical tests, for which you can find a source in the video description. A QQ plot is the easiest to interpret, therefore we continue creating one, or rather two. In order to create the plots for each group, I strongly suggest using the ggpub-r package. Use the install.packages and library function to enable its functionality. We then use the ggqqplot function. First, put in your data frame. Second, within quotation marks, take the test variable. Third, put facet.by equals, and then again within quotation marks, the group variable. After running the code, you should get two QQ plots, one for each group. The dots represent the observations and the line the perfect normal distribution. Therefore, the distances between the dots and the line should be minimized. There will be acceptable deviations, especially on the edges of the distribution, meaning the upper right hand corner and the lower left hand corner. For my test variable, deviations are not of concern, and I can continue testing homogeneity of variance. For testing the assumption of homogeneity of variances, an I-test can be simply looking at the variance of the test variable for each group. For that purpose, you can use the aggregate function. Put the test variable first, then use tilde, followed by the group variable. Conclude with data equals and then the name of your data frame, and then put the var function as shown on the screen. If the variances shown are roughly equal, you should be good to go. 96.5 and 97.4 are almost identical in my example. If you need an analytical test like the Levene's test, you need to get the car package first. Use the install.packages function and the library function to enable it. Then you can use the Levene test function by simply putting the test variable first, followed by a comma and then the group variable. The null hypothesis you want to retain is equal variances. In my case, the p-value is well above any typical alpha level of 1% or 5%, and I can therefore assume equal variances, which was also the outcome of my first I-test. Please be aware that with larger samples, the power of the Levene's test, as with every statistical test, increases and negligible differences will lead to a rejection of equal variances. If you cannot observe approximately equal variances, you should either use the Welch test, which corrects for unequal variances, or fall back to the two-sample Wilcoxon test. After importing data, I want to see the mean and standard deviation of the number of push-ups for my two groups. I recommend the Psych package for that and its describe by function. I can see that the mean of the trained group is a bit higher compared to the untrained group, 61 versus 52. The standard deviations are roughly the same with 9.82 and 9.87. You can also use box plots for visualizing the data. Now I want to test whether the means are significantly different from each other. For this I use the t.test function and start off with the test variable, the repetitions. After that I use the tilde, the small wave symbol, and then put the group variable behind it. Note that the default testing will be two-sided, meaning you test only for a difference. In case you proposed in advance that your first group has a greater mean than the second one, you can add the argument alternative equals greater. This works if you simply have numbers for groups. If you have names for groups, the alphabetical order is used. If you hypothesized a smaller mean for group 1, use alternative equals less. I can run this one line and get the results. If the p-value is below the predefined threshold, for example 0.05, the null hypothesis can be rejected. Reminder, the null hypothesis for the two-sample t-test assumes no difference of the mean between group 1 and 2, or trained and untrained. In my case, I defined alpha as 0.05 and can therefore reject the null hypothesis because my p-value for a two-sided test is 0.035. I can conclude that the means, 61 and 52, are obviously different from each other. If I tested one-sided for a larger mean of group 1 compared to group 2, I could certainly see that result as well. The p-value would be half in this scenario. After you've observed a significant difference, you should follow this up with the calculation of the effect size Cohen's d. The first step is installing a new package called LSR, using the install.packages and library function. The second step is using the Cohen's d function, which calculates Cohen's d. The test variable and the group variable have to be entered into this function, separated by the tilde symbol. The syntax is the same as for the t.test function. After running this line, you will only get one number as output, Cohen's d. In my case, it is 0.875 rounded to 3 decimals. The third step is to classify the magnitude of this effect. If similar studies in your research field exist, compare your effect size with the given one. If no comparable studies exist, use the common thresholds within your research field. If those are also non-existent, you can refer to Cohen 92 A-power primer. Page 157 shows 3 thresholds for the 2-sample t-test. If your Cohen's d exceeds 0.2, it is a small effect. If it exceeds 0.5, it is a medium effect. And if it exceeds 0.8, it can be classified as a large effect, as is the case in my example. When you're done, you have to write up the results. The output of the 2-sample t-test in R usually consists of only 2 parts, the test itself and, in the case of a significant test result, the effect size Cohen's d. First, one formulates whether the group means are different, providing the mean and standard deviation for each of the groups in the process. Furthermore, the t-value is reported together with the degrees of freedom. In this test, the degrees of freedom is always the number of observations minus 2. This is followed by the p-value, and in the case of a significant difference, i.e. effect, also the calculated effect size Cohen's d. Finally, the magnitude of this effect size is classified with, for example, Cohen 92 or the respective research field specific thresholds.